You ever get the feeling that our relationship with the divine is in the middle of a massive shift? Like the old stories just aren't fitting anymore and something new is trying to break through. Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. This idea of a spiritual evolution that might just be the next great chapter for all of us.
And that brings us to this huge central question that really gets to the heart of it all. Is God, or the universe, or whatever you call it, is that changing? Or is something really profound changing inside of us, inside human consciousness itself?
And here we have it. This is our guiding idea for this whole explainer, from spiritual teacher John Davis. The point isn't that God is some kind of work in progress. It's that we are. The whole story is about the evolution of our inner lens, our growing ability to see a divine reality that maybe was there all along.
Okay, so let's get into it. To really get where we're going, you first have to understand where we've been. This first part is all about looking at how our collective image of God has changed over thousands of years, moving from a place of fear toward a place of real consciousness.
I mean, think about it. When you read some of the most ancient texts, the divine often comes across as a kind of tribal warrior god, right? Jealous, demanding, sometimes even violent. But as history unfolds, that image, it starts to soften. It becomes more universal, more compassionate, more internal. We're not talking about two different gods here. We're talking about two very different stages of human development.
So why does this even happen? Well, a few thinkers have some really fascinating ideas. John Davis puts it simply, we just outgrow old, fear-based beliefs, kind of like a child stops being afraid of the monster under the bed. The historian Karen Armstrong connects it to our empathy. As our circle of compassion gets bigger, so does our image of God. Richard Rohr points a finger at our own egos and fears, saying they act like a distorted lens. And then you have neurotheologian Andrew Newberg, who suggests our actual brains are changing, allowing us to conceive of God in a bigger, more universal way. But what's the trigger for these huge leaps? What really pushes us forward? According to these thinkers, the number one catalyst is suffering. It's almost always a crisis, either personal or for a whole society, that shatters our old comfortable worldviews. When the old stories just don't make sense of our reality anymore, we're forced to dig deeper and ask much bigger questions. Okay, let's move on to our next section and see how this all connects. This evolution from fear to consciousness leads us straight to something happening right now: the decline of fear as a spiritual motivator, and the collapse of all the control systems that were built on top of it.
Now, this is a question a lot of people have, and it's a totally fair one. For centuries, the fear of punishment, the fear of hell, was seen as the glue holding society together. So if you take that away, what happens? What fills that vacuum? Does everything just descend into chaos? Well, the vacuum isn't filled with chaos. It's actually filled by a completely different operating system. You see, a fear-based religion produces obedience. It's all about external control. The core question deep down is, am I safe? But a love-based spirituality, that produces transformation. It's driven by your own inner authority, and the core question changes completely. It becomes, how can I love more deeply? So why did fear become such a big deal in the first place? Honestly, it was efficient. It was a really effective tool for control. If you convince millions of people that a cosmic dictator is watching their every move and will punish them forever, you can keep social order pretty easily. And this really kicked into high gear when early Christianity merged with the Roman Empire, basically turning religion into a tool of the state. But, and this is the crucial part, here is the ultimate limit of any system built on fear. As John Davis says, you cannot scare someone out of an experience of love. Once a person has a real, direct, transformative encounter with the divine as a loving presence, well, the threat of punishment just loses all its power. It just doesn't work anymore. This brings us to the next absolutely crucial topic. If the threat of hell is fading away for more and more people, what on earth happens to morality? How do we figure out how to be good without that ultimate threat hanging over our heads?
Let's just tackle this one head on because it's probably the most common objection you hear when you talk about moving beyond fear. If there's no ultimate punishment, what's to stop people from just doing whatever they want?
The answer is really about the difference between just complying with rules and having true morality. See, fear creates compliance. It's a brittle, external kind of behavior that breaks the second you think no one's watching. But authentic morality? That comes from consciousness. It's an inner accountability that's with you all the time, because it's part of who you are. And this isn't just some vague, fluffy idea. There's actually a pretty clear path. It all starts with awakening your consciousness to the fact that we are all interconnected, that harming someone else is, on some level, harming yourself. Out of that awareness, compassion isn't something you have to force. It becomes instinctive. And that cultivates a deep inner authority, where you're accountable to your own inner state, not some external threat.
Okay, so if our consciousness is evolving and our sense of morality is becoming more internal, how does that change the way we look at ancient sacred books? Let's explore what it means to read scripture in this new stage of development.
I absolutely love this metaphor from John Davis because it just captures the whole thing so perfectly. The divine inspiration, that's the sunlight. It's pure, but it's always, always filtered through a human window. That window is the writer's culture, their psychology, their politics, their own limitations. The colors, the shapes, the shadows, that's the human part. Scripture is both divine and deeply human at the same time. And this isn't a fringe view. You see it across different fields. The historian Bart Ehrman really focuses on the human element, the scribes, the edits, the power struggles. Karen Armstrong sees it as a mix of real divine insight and, the political agendas of the time. And Richard Rohr puts it beautifully. The divine speaks, but our human ego distorts the message. The clear consensus here is that these texts are complex. They're not simple instruction manuals. So, what's the big takeaway? The spiritually mature way forward is to stop treating Scripture like a rigid rulebook for behavior and start seeing it as a mirror for the soul. It's a tool to help you awaken your own consciousness, not a weapon to control other people. It's the beginning of a conversation, not the final word. So we've traced this whole evolution from the past into the present. Now let's turn our eyes to the horizon. What is this next stage of our spiritual development actually starting to look like? Well, for something new to really emerge, the old stuff has to dissolve. And what we're seeing fade away are the main pillars of that old way of thinking. Theologies built on fear, claims that my group has the one and only truth, relying on some external top-down authority, the ego's desperate need for black and white certainty, and that rigid, dogmatic literalism. And what's rising up in its place? Something really powerful. The focus is shifting to inner awakening, to direct experiential spirituality, things like meditation and contemplation. We're seeing a huge emphasis on universal compassion, a move towards what the mystics call non-duality, the idea that the divine is in everything, and even this amazing convergence between science and spirituality. To put it as simply as possible, the future of spirituality is interior, it's experiential, and it's universal. It's a really profound shift away from trying to find the right group to join or the right set of beliefs to adopt, and moving toward the inner work of waking up to the divinity that's already inside of you. And so, at the end of all of this, we turn this huge global evolution into a really personal invitation, because this isn't just some grand theory about humanity out there. It's a living process that's happening inside each of us right now. So the final question isn't for the experts. It's for you. What is the next step in your evolution?